Honestly, today has been such an exhausting day. From the start, I went to get groceries, had to carry like 8 bags, four each hand, walked back here, did laundry, cooked, cleaned, all while doing remote work. And normally I'd have a smile on my face, but honestly, I feel more drained than usual. And yeah, I still wanted to make this video anyways because I want to show up. I want to show up every single day. And one thing I've been trying to do is teaching my brain when I don't want to do something, that's the cue that I gotta start doing it. But I think in this video, I want to talk about how growing up in a dysfunctional family led me to toxic ideologies like the red pill. So it's funny I make this video because a month ago, I made this video on TikTok. And I normally would have never made this on TikTok for several reasons. One, because my friends follow me on that platform, and that app also recommends you to contacts of your phone numbers. Two, usually TikTok is not quite the platform to normally talk about self-improvement in the same way YouTube is. I do believe that YouTube was the platform that spearheaded this whole thing, and definitely YouTube is a lot more of a friendly platform when it comes to self-improvement. And three, it just felt very risky. It felt like people were going to misunderstand it and misinterpret it. But surprisingly, a lot of people actually resonated with it really well. And I think that's because I humanized the story. I really explained how somebody could fall for this. And it's really ultimately not a character flaw as much as it is just not having a good upbringing to lead that person to the right places, right? So in order for this story to make sense, we need to go back to my childhood. And growing up, by the time I was 6, pretty much, I quickly realized I couldn't either rely on my dad or my mom for emotional support. They were both pretty much emotionally unavailable. Like my mom, may God bless her in every way, she tried her best, but emotionally she just wasn't there. And my dad, at the time, he was very verbally abusive. So quickly figured out that I couldn't really rely on either of them. Yet, as I was going through elementary, middle school, and high school, I felt like I was getting punished for not knowing how to talk to people, punished for being introverted, punished for just being a loner, like a dweeb, like a weirdo, right? And it had gotten so bad that by the last year of high school, I was so determined. Like, I don't care what I have to do. I will get out of this. Like, I will do anything it takes to no longer feel like a cockroach. And I know some of you might wince at that word, but I choose that word specifically because that's honestly how I felt back then. But anyways, yeah, so I started going on the internet, started learning how to work out, started learning more, how to dress up more fashionably, and by the time I entered university, it worked to some degree. I started learning how to talk to people. I was facing my anxiety of talking to others, and for the first time ever in my life, people liked me. Like, people wanted to talk to me. People were inviting me to groups, to functions, to gatherings, and I was like, me? You're inviting me to that? Like what? Like, there's no way. But yeah, so I got invited to a lot of those, and by summer of 2019, this was after my first year of university, where I was doing amazing socially, but academically I was flunking hard, and I was just like so tired of following the rules that I had wanted to go into dating. And this is where I unintentionally discovered the red pill. I believe the first video I ever watched was from AMS, right? And listen, AMS Strategies, he's an OG. He's a really cool guy if you actually get to know him, and he gave some really good advice, but he was the first person ever who talked about the red pill back when the red pill was liked and famous and more popular, and he was giving advice that I never heard before, but as I started implementing it, it worked. Like, when I actually showed that I wasn't easy, that I could throw in some humor and not just agree with what everything a woman was saying, I actually started seeing some results. And I was shocked, right? Because again, my parents never had to talk with me about talking to women or preparing for that. And again, I was just kind of clueless. And to see that it worked, I was quickly hooked. And by like sophomore year of 2019, I was starting to gain some experience. And I'm not going to go into it further because again, I'm a practicing Muslim, and part of my fundamental belief is not having premarital sex until marriage, like trying to abide to that to the best of my abilities. So I'm not here to flaunt anything I did. In fact, I'm not even proud of that whatsoever. Like, I know we live in a society that is always trying to encourage men to like flaunt their body counts and have those experiences, but at least in Islam, it's the complete opposite. Like, true masculinity, prophetic masculinity is when you hold yourself to principles, even when you can do something because that is the right thing to do. But anyways, yeah, so by that summer, I had gained a lot of experience, and I thought I figured it out, right? But what I wasn't realizing that even though this advice was working, if anything, it was so detrimental to me because it prevented me from looking at deeper issues I had in myself. So, fast forward a few years after that, I had 2 to 3 relationships at the time, and the last two specifically were so different from one another. Like they were both completely different individuals, yet at the end, I noticed I felt a very similar feeling of powerlessness, of feeling like there was nothing I could do to save the relationship, and feeling like the more I tried to save it, the more it just kind of backfired on my face. Like it was just more like act out of desperation and not knowing what to do. And I remember after my last relationship, I was just like, there's something very wrong here. I either need to stop and do something differently, or my marriage, like my future family, my future wife, we're gonna end up having the same dynamic. And it just felt terrible. It felt powerless. It felt draining. It felt like all the worst emotions you could ever have hitting you all at once. So I started to look inwards, and I kind of started realizing this last year. I had to look at my family because that was the one thing I always avoided in conversations. That was the one thing I always avoided when it came to talking about with other people. But the more I realized I tried to avoid that, the more dysfunctional I became. And I think in a way I'm grateful for the red pill, and I'm grateful for having gone through that, because if I had never gone through that, I would have never realized the importance it was to look back at family. Because I think, a lot of us, whether consciously or subconsciously, we go into romantic relationships. We try to find the one because we have this expectation that the one will complete us. But so many times, like you cannot fix a broken puzzle piece that is yours with someone else's puzzle piece. Like it's just not going to happen, right? And it shouldn't, right? Because if it were, that's essentially saying that your whole life is dictated by another individual. When in reality, it's you who can dictate how your life goes. But it took me a few years, but eventually my intuition and like kind of me thinking like, hey, like look, this doesn't make sense, right? Like how come me and so many other people are watching these videos, but like 50, 60, 70 years ago, like our moms and dads, our grandpas and grandfathers, they didn't watch these videos. They just met and had a relationship, and like yes, there were ups, there were downs, but they figured it out. Like like why am I trying to watch a video when this wasn't the natural way of doing things? And on top of that, most of these men who were giving me advice, the same men who once upon a time when I was 19, I looked up to because they had the money, the cars, the lifestyle, and the women. These were the same guys who couldn't keep a woman for the most part. And that was something I always picked up on, but I didn't know what the alternative was. So I just kept listening to them until one day it was clear that this was problematic and that these videos were quite literally destroying my life. They weren't actually helping me, they were destroying my life now, even though they had given me some advice that I still use to this day. For example, not just agreeing with everything that everyone says just because it's a nice thing to do, having a backbone, and being gentle but firm, right? Like having boundaries for both man and woman. But, I think I'm so glad I looked inwards because now a year later, I'm so much happier alone than I ever was in any of those relationships. And that wasn't anyone's problem. I don't blame any of them for not being able to do that. That was a problem that only I could fix. But at the time, I didn't realize I was fixed. I had to fix them because I was in such a rabbit hole, right? So I guess the long story short, just because I'm honestly so tired today, and like I don't want to fake it if I don't have the energy, but I just want to say people who grow up in broken families, whether that's like monetary or emotionally, they're much higher at risk to fall for these type of ideologies. And again, there's a reason why our political climate the way it is now. And like, listen, I'm not gonna get into that, but the point is, there's reasons why things in the world are happening the way they are. There's reasons why so many different men who have commented on my channel or I've seen in Discord servers literally say I'm purposeless. I don't know what to do with my life. I'm meaningless. And it's almost like in every way, like women are starting to really out compete and beat men at their own game, like with careers, with making money, with skill sets. And I think it's really important to ask ourselves, why is this happening? And it's really easy to blame the other side and blame the other person, but I really hope this video encourages you to take a more nuanced approach as somebody who was once a red pillar but is reformed in a way, and who really had to go through the downs before I could get to a new, stable, more fulfilling place in my life, because I myself didn't have the mentorship. I myself had to make so many mistakes to learn how to do this. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all soon. Peace.